might not be in the same room with these guys anymore, but you're going to walk together forever as champions. And no matter where you go in this life, you're going to walk together having won Super Bowl 47 and been a member of that team. And those are the things I think that you really cherish the most in being part of a football team or any team for that matter.
One degree of separation. The lines all cross, the stories align. One degree of separation. Who's the next? You'll know in time.
Welcome back to 1 Degree of Separation. I'm your host, Ryan Murphy, and this is the podcast where we put the 6 degrees of separation theory to the test and uncover just how truly connected we all are. If you're new here, here's how it works. At the start of every 6-episode season, I kick things off with a captivating first guest. After our conversation, that guest refers me to the next link in the chain, someone they know with a truly fascinating story. Don't miss a link in the chain, and make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and follow along on social media at 1 Degree Pod to meet every one of these amazing individuals with me. Thanks to a recommendation from our episode 4 guest, Adam Gale. We're chatting with a man whose life has been entirely dedicated to the sport of football. He's currently leading the program at Quincy, Notre Dame High School as their head coach, but his resume includes being a part of the Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens back in 2012. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Jack Cornell. Welcome to the show, Jack.
Hey, Ryan, I appreciate you having me today. Look forward to talking to you.
Yeah, no problem. So tell me a little bit about how you know our last guest, Adam.
Well, Adam is a pillar of our community here in Quincy. He's a business owner, does a lot of work with a lot of our players that we have at QND. He's got a son who's an 8th grader who's going to be coming up into our program next year. He and his wife are both very involved with our youth football league, both very involved with our church and our greatest school community. So I know Adam very well at this point, but I know I'm going to get to know him even better over the next 4 years when his son finally does get to QND as a football player for us.
Nice. So now you were a standout player at Quincy Notre Dame yourself, and now you're the head coach. What's the biggest difference between playing on that field and now leading the team from the sidelines?
Yeah, obviously I can't really affect the game the way that a player can. And, anybody that plays football knows that this is not a lifetime sport. This is a once in a lifetime sport. So you only got so many years to play the sport. Fortunately, now I'm in a position where I get to coach this team. And so I still get to be part of Friday nights, but just not the same. So, when I first took this job, I found myself really eager to coach football. And as a head coach, coaching is actually one of the smallest parts of the job. So, that being said, there's a lot of experience that I've gained over the years that I try to lend to our players and just try to be the best version of myself that I can be day in and day out for them.
So tell me a little bit about your high school days. You were an offensive lineman, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I graduated from QND in 2007. When I was growing up, football was always a driving part of my life. I can remember watching football on Sundays with my dad after church, just sitting on our living room floor while we're building Thomas the Tank Engine trains and seeing him being really enamored with what was going on television. And then when I started to catch an eye for it, I think I just fell in love with the aesthetics of it, just the padding and the uniforms and the way that the players were celebrating and the emotion of it all. The pageantry of football, I would say, drew me in. My parents aren't originally from Quincy, and in this town, it's a big Catholic community in this city. And my parents, being Catholic, wanted to raise my brother and I into Catholic schools. First took me out to my first QND football game in the mid to late 90s. And I can remember just seeing the crowd and the lights and hearing the sounds and just being totally enamored with it all, and knew in that moment that that's what I wanted to do and wanted to be part of. Probably didn't know at the time that that would turn into my whole life, but I just really feel guided by God's path this whole time, and fortunately get to be doing what I'm doing on a daily basis right now.
And what team did you follow growing up?
I've always been a Green Bay Packer fan. I think that I can remember seeing the Packers and the Cowboys square off in the playoffs on some of those Sunday afternoon television sit downs. And they had a young, energetic quarterback at the time named Brett Favre that just played the game with great enthusiasm, and that drew me in. And fortunately, I think I picked the right team because it seems like all that team's ever done since I followed them was win. So very fortunate to have that. Yeah.
So now, after you graduated high school, you went on to the University of Illinois. Tell me about what made you choose that program specifically.
Yeah, I was really fortunate to have a lot of scholarship offers coming out of high school. I had a really good junior season and put some good things on video and started to get some interest from some schools. Was lucky to have the right genetics to play at big time college football level. So I really came down to a few different schools, but at the end it was between Illinois, Michigan State, and Nebraska. And it just felt like Illinois was very at home to me. It was right down the road. It was an in-state program that was on the rise. It had struggled for, a lot of my early childhood, but seemed to be trending in the right direction. And I just, really was appealed at what they were trying to sell me, and met a lot of really good people there, and decided to make that be my destination. I think it was a great school, a school that I'm still very fond of to this day, and a school that continues to do great things.
And tell me about some of your playing days there.
Yeah, I'm very proud of what we were able to accomplish when I was at Illinois. My freshman year, we went to the Rose Bowl for the first time since the mid '80s. I had an unbelievably successful season that year. I was redshirted, so I didn't get to play, but just being part of that team and the great players that were on it, I feel very privileged to call a lot of those men my friends to this day. After that, I was a starter on our program's first ever back-to-back bowl win team. Was voted as a captain my senior year. Won an award for dedication to the football program. So, I went there with the goal of wanting to play, wanting to graduate, and was able to do all those things and then really flourish as a man, which I think ultimately is the goal of whatever you do after high school, right? I mean, you need to kind of walk away from that part of your life and start to forge your own path. And I was able to do that surrounded by other like-minded individuals that wanted to win just as much as I did. And fortunately, we were able to do that. We won a lot of football games in my time.
So tell me a little bit more about the experience of playing in the Rose Bowl. I know that's a huge game. Everybody knows the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun because as I said, I was redshirted, so I didn't really have the pressure of preparing to play in the game myself, but just being part of that experience and in that program and all the fun activities that we got to do out there. So, it was actually when our semester had ended, we obviously had to stay there for bowl practice prep. The game itself was on January 1st, so we didn't get much of a winter break, which was fine by all of us because we knew we were going to get, to experience something that not many people get to experience. Our bowl preparation started in early December, and I can remember those being some really intense practices. They were legit 2-a-days, and just kind of balls to the wall football. Uh, Guys got a lot better in that amount of time. It afforded us a lot of extra practices for even a guy like myself to kind of earn some more stripes and get on the field sooner. But I can remember getting out there and being put up in this beautiful hotel in downtown Los Angeles and getting chauffeured around all these different experiences, and got to live this out with my teammates for a while. And then obviously played the game. And that day we played a very talented USC Trojan football team that ended up putting on us pretty good. But I mean, just the experience of being out there was unbelievable. And as I said, the guys that were on that football team, guys that I still call friends to this day, just a lot of really talented football players and high level competitors that were on that team.
You mentioned, that you guys had kind of a rough game against USC. How do you balance the mentality of the wins and losses?
Yeah, I had to learn a long time ago that you got to take the good with the bad in this business. We prepare a lot and work very, very hard for just a few days of the year. When I was in college, it was 12 games. In high school now, it's 9. So you spend literally your entire calendar year preparing for just those days. And when you work as hard as any football team does to win and don't come out on top, it's obviously disappointing. But I think there's no regrets in that because you obviously put all the work in that you possibly could. You've exhausted every opportunity. And as long as you can really look at yourself in the mirror and say that that's the case, then I think you feel good about it. But as I said, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. Not every team is going to win every single game. Even the best teams in the world are going to lose. So you got to certainly be able to do both of those things. And I think the way that I see losing now is it's not so much of a failure, but it is a learning opportunity. Certainly, it gives you a chance to look at what are some mistakes and shortcomings you have. Like now as a coach, if we lose a game, we can pinpoint a handful of plays of what really caused the outcome of that football game. And we can work to address those situations in practice or in meetings and try to educate our team, obviously not to make those mistakes anymore. So I think the same is true for a game like that. I think for us to be in those positions against a high level football team like that, it gave us confidence moving forward in the next high level football game that we would play that, we have earned the right to be in this game. And even though it didn't go our way, we have tested our mettle against some of the best football programs in the country. And so with that kind of experience comes a level of resiliency that I think helped kind of pave the way for our program at Illinois moving forward.
Your senior year, you mentioned you were voted team captain. Tell me a little bit about the leadership required for that.
Yeah, that's something I was really proud of because that wasn't anything the coaches appointed. That was a player vote type of deal, similar to the way that we do, our captain's voting process now at QND. I was a team captain in high school, I was a team captain in college, and those are, in my opinion, some of the most humbling awards that I could get because it was voted on by my teammates. I think that the work required to do something specifically that thing, means that you got to be on your A game at all times, whether it was an early morning lift or a practice in a hot summer day. You had to have the same level of enthusiasm and drive as you would, the days that you didn't want to be there as the days that you wanted to be there. So I think that level of consistency is what I tried to be and what my coaches tried to get me to be back then. And I'm really grateful for that because I think that really helped shape me into the person that I ultimately have become today.
You also won the Red Grange Award that year. Tell me a little bit about that award and how that came about.
Yeah, another award I was really proud to win that was not an award that Illinois football gives out every year. Red Grange, obviously one of the most famous college football players of all time, considered, one of the greatest original college football players from the original era of that game. And that award is given out to a player at Illinois football with uncommon dedication. And I think that I probably earned that award again just by being consistent and doing the things that coaches required of me to do every single day. And my senior year, we had a really challenging season. We started the year 6-0, and then we finished 0-6, and we're the only college football team in the history of college football to ever have that kind of stat attributed to us. So, not exactly a bright claim to fame for me, but I think that navigating something like that and trying to keep guys moving towards the cause in a positive way is what helps secure something like that. But just incredibly humbled to get recognized like that by my coaches in the program because I was dedicated. And I think that anything that you do, you should give it your all, win, lose, or draw. And so that was, certainly my mentality that year.
You signed with the Baltimore Ravens in 2012. What was that moment like?
Yeah, when my season got over in college, I knew that I wanted to attempt to play professional football. I knew it was my only chance in life to really do that. It's not one of those kind of things that you can, kind of kick down the road and figure out at a later day. You really got to strike while the iron's hot. So, it felt like I had a decent opportunity to at least get a chance. Fortunately, I was an offensive lineman, and those are positions that every team is looking for every year. And, it wasn't anything that I really did or didn't do. I was blessed with a certain level of genetics that gave me the right body size in order to pursue that dream. So, spent 10 weeks in Provo, Utah, training for my pro day. I had a really good pro day. Had, 19 starts in college of some quality film. So my name and film got passed around to some scouts. Thought there's a chance I could have gotten drafted, but when the draft kind of starts and ends and your name's not called, immediately after is when teams start to fill some voids in free agency, which was where the Ravens had found me. So if the draft would have been one more round, I think somebody would have taken me, but this wasn't the way that it worked. Fortunately, it kind of allowed me to pick and choose where I wanted to go. So when the draft ended, I had three teams that reached out to my agent: the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Miami Dolphins. And of those three teams, I felt like my best chance of getting on and staying and developing with the team was with Baltimore. Uh, Also didn't hurt the fact that that was probably the most successful franchise of those three teams, and I wanted to play with the best. The year before I got there, the Ravens very famously lose in the waning moments of the AFC Championship game on a shank kick that, you know, if they'd have gone in, probably would have gone to the Super Bowl, maybe could have won, but obviously didn't. but, knew that that team would have been in a similar position the following year with just the names they had, the Ray Lewises and the Ed Reeds and the Haloti Nadas and the Joe Flaccos of the world. So when they called and offered that, I just thought that was too good of an opportunity to pass up. Was really fortunate to land at a spot that, I think aligned with a lot of my values. There were a lot of strong Catholic men in that locker room. Baltimore is a very Catholic community. The state of Maryland was one of the original kind of hubs for Catholicism in America. But what I found was, a team that really wanted to strive to be the best day in and day out. And I think that people think every NFL team is like that. I don't think every NFL team is like that. I think every team is built kind of different. Every team is owned differently. And the Ravens did a lot to support their players. And as a result, were able to find the success in the field that they were back then.
Was the NFL the ultimate goal, or did that come after the fact, after graduating?
It's really hard, I think, to lean into what your long-term goals are when you're in the process of completing one in and of itself, right? So my main goal my senior year was to win a Big Ten championship. And when it became apparent that that wasn't going to be the case, I think the goal probably changed to win a game, as something as simple as that. I think that whenever any season ends, I always find myself in a state of great reflection and what is it that I want to do next. I think that before my senior season, I knew that I was going into my last year of college football, and the only real way to continue playing this game that I love was to give the NFL a shot. But I can't say that I, was training for the NFL my senior year of college, or that, that was what every move I was making was dedicated to. I was really focused on winning. It was taught to me at a very early age that if you can make the team's priorities your priorities, then everything else will take care of itself. And I've found that to be true everywhere that I've been. If I make my teams and my teammates' success my priority number one, as a result, I'll find success for myself. And now as a coach, I'm really trying to preach that same message day in and day out. And it's challenging because on any team, you're going to have 100 different personalities. Everybody wants to win, but everybody wants to do it in kind of their own way. But I knew that when my senior season had ended, that the only next logical step was to give it a shot. I was raised, I had a backup plan at the time. I was going to get into coaching if that wasn't going to work out. So I had some fallback options. I think I've had a lot of teammates over my career that didn't really have very good fallback options. And as a result, I don't think they kind of lost their way a little bit. And I certainly didn't want that to be the case for me. But that being said, again, really saw that as the one and only time in my life where I could pursue that. Thought I was good enough to give it a shot. I mean, what was the worst I could say? No, somebody was going to eventually. So why not go somewhere where I feel like I can have success and try to ride this out as long as I could?
Exactly. I like we said there. Obviously, the worst they can say is no. So what was the biggest culture shock for you going from the college football to the NFL?
I'd say my biggest culture shocks came honestly from high school to college, more so than college to the NFL. I grew up in a small Catholic high school in Quincy, Illinois. It wasn't a very diverse student body. And so getting into a locker room in college, I found myself kind of as a minority and learning from, different cultures from across the country. And really appreciated getting to know a lot of teammates from a lot of different areas of this country, and really was appreciative of where I came from as a result. I can remember my first college football practice. I was ill equipped. I was not ready. I thought I was in shape, but I wasn't. I thought I knew the plays, but I didn't. When I got to college, then I was or when I got to the NFL, rather, I was a little more prepared for that transition. I thought the speed of the game was a little easier to pick up. Culturally, I fit in the locker room. Um, and it just seemed like I was ready to play the game at that level. Whereas in college, initially, I wasn't. But I think obviously the biggest thing is in the NFL, that's all you do is football. In college, we would have a 2 or 3 week training camp, but then classes would start and you would have some kind of normal life similar to what our high school players have now. But in the NFL, it's just kind of like training camp continues all the way through the end of the season. So it's, an 18-week regular season, but it's really an 18-week training camp where all of these guys do is football. It was amazing to me to see a lot of the very seasoned veterans and their routine they would have day in and day out. The professionalism that comes with being a professional football player is different than I think what other people would think of professionalism as in corporate America or in some blue collar trade. It's taking care of your body. It's about doing things the same way over and over again. I like Ray Lewis, the greatest linebacker of all time. He had a set time where every day he was sitting in a cold tub and he was, eating some kind of fruit or his diet wouldn't vary. And, he just was very meticulous in how he went about his business. And I think that that's where you really get guys that stay in the NFL as long as guys like that do, because um, they're almost kind of monk like in their approach. I mean, it's very religious the way that they go about doing what they have to do to prepare to play in a football game. And I think that that was not something that I certainly was used to in college. In college, you know, game gets over, you go to the bar and have a good time, and you may eat, you may not. But in the NFL, it's like you really got to be on your game because everybody else around you is as well. So I think the professionalism of playing football is what really stood out the most to me.
Now, you mentioned that learning the plays was a big part of it. I think a big misconception people have about offensive linemen is that they're only protecting the quarterback. Obviously, there must be more to it than that. Kind of describe that for us.
Yeah, well, for an offensive lineman, you obviously got to run and pass block. So you're protecting more than just the quarterback, but anybody with the football. And it's not just a cliche to say that, for football, the most important position is the offensive line. I mean, they're really the group that's going to decide what everybody else on offense is doing. How they block a specific play is going to dictate who gets the ball, is going to dictate how they attack the defense. Oftentimes, it's going to dictate how a defense lines up. So, uh, kind of the chess match of football really starts up front in the trenches. And I knew that while I was a pretty good athlete coming out of high school and college, my athleticism was not going to separate me from the competition. So having to know my assignment inside and out was really big. And when you have seconds or fractions of a second to react to something the defense is doing, you really got to know what you're doing before it happens. In the NFL, there were a lot more adjustments that happened at the line of scrimmage than they did in college. So you had to know how to recognize what you were seeing, how to communicate it to the other guys around you, and then how to execute it. So I always I like the phrase AACT: alignment, assignment, communication, and technique. And so those to me are the four keys to victory. And what I preach to our guys every day. And if I in the huddle when I hear the play call can know what my alignment, what my assignment, how I communicate, and what my technique is, I know I can find success on any given play. So they really got to try to train your mind on what to think and how to think through the course of any given play because it can change at a moment's notice. But you got to be obviously a thinking man, but you got to be ready for physical combat up front as well.
Now, I want to make a little connection here to a previous episode that I had. I had a guest who was a NHRA driver, drives a funny car, and a big part of that is reaction time. I imagine that's similar as an offensive lineman because you don't want to jump before the snap.
Yeah, and I think that for offensive linemen in particular, it's about reacting to the defensive lineman's movement because I'm always going to find myself in very unnatural body positions just by nature of my job as an offensive lineman. And the defense kind of has the advantage in that they can decide where they're going to go, and then I have to react to their movement. And if I'm too slow, then that person's going to beat me. Or if my technique is, one half an inch off, that guy's going to beat me. So I got to be able to react in good time, but also be in the proper position, probably similar to the race car driver. Otherwise, something catastrophic can happen, if not to me, then to one of my teammates. And so that constant threat is always at the front of your mind, because that guy across from you is trying to do harm to you and one of your teammates. So in order for you to be the most prepared, studying and being as on top of your assignment and what the defense is doing gives you the best chance for success. So that type of preparation helps the reaction time, I think, speed up and just be much more targeted in its approach.
Now, 2012 turned out to be a Super Bowl winning season for the Ravens. What was it like being part of that team and experiencing a Super Bowl victory?
Yeah, it was very surreal. It was a very long season. I got in there in April of 2012. and immediately went through, all the off-season programs, the OTAs, the mini camps, and all that, and I knew that I had to be in great shape and understand my assignment. And I felt like I was in tremendously good shape. Like I never got tired at practice, felt strong, felt, really durable. But every rookie in the NFL somewhere somehow is going to hit a wall. And so that season, it was a 4-game preseason, followed by a 16-game regular season, and followed by 4 postseason games. So by the time we got to the Super Bowl, I mean, we're talking 24 games of NFL football. And, I can remember walking off the practice field for the last time and like my legs almost giving out because it was like, I'm tired, right? But the whole season honestly kind of felt like a movie. One of the quality control coaches at the time ends up being an assistant coach for the University of Michigan a few years later. I actually meet up with him in Quincy because he is recruiting a local kid for running back at the University of Michigan. And we just kind of started talking about that year because where he was at on the coaching staff is kind of where I was at on the roster. He was kind of the low man on the totem pole. He didn't quite have a seat at the table yet, but he was part of the thing. And so he and I kind of bonded a lot. And we were just talking about how magical of a run that was because there was just some things that happened in games that were hard to explain. We had a 4th and forever in San Diego playing the Chargers that our quarterback does a check down route to, end up rattling off a 70-yard touchdown run to win the game. We had season-ending injuries. Ray Lewis tore his tricep, thought he was going to be out for the year, ends up coming back for the first playoff game and basically says, this is it for me. This is my last ride. I'm going to retire no matter what. So let's go win this thing. And, just the way that we won some of those games in the playoffs were unbelievable. We played a divisional game in Denver. That was the coldest game I've ever been part of. It was a triple overtime game that, we statistically were beat at least 3 times in that ball game. And due to some late game heroics by Joe Flacco and Jacoby Jones and Anquan Bolden, we were able to win the game. And then we go back to the AFC Championship, back in New England where it was the year before, where I told you about the kicker misses wide right and the Ravens lose the game. And it's like we're back in this place where seemingly the story for me kind of began, right? And beat the Patriots in the AFC Championship game to punch our ticket, and just the level of gratification on the coaches and the players who'd been there for a while. Like I'm just some rookie, I'm an undrafted guy that's been there for just 6 months. There's some guys that have been there for years and haven't come close to this game. So it's like part of it's kind of like, who am I to get to experience this type of thing? But I knew that when we had won the game in New England, that our chances to win this game were legit. And, obviously that year we played the 49ers where John Harbaugh's brother, was the coach. And so it was like a brother and brother game. But even in that game itself, it was in New Orleans. I'd never been to New Orleans before, spent a week down there. It was a ton of fun. That was the Super Bowl where the lights went out in the second half. And, it was crazy, the whole theatrics of it all. And then what I can remember vividly the most about the game is when the game is over and, the trophy comes out and there's a sea of people on the field, and that's crazy. We get back to the locker room and I'm not really sure what to expect, like everything to me at that point is just like a wild ride. And so we get in the locker room. It ends kind of the way that every normal game ends, right? You get a shower, you get changed, and you head outside. Before we go out there, Michael Phelps, who's a big Baltimore Raven fan, is from Baltimore. He's in the locker room talking about this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in sports, And to me, I lean up to my buddy next to me. I'm like, this guy's got like 13,000 gold medals, and he's talking about this is the coolest thing. Like, I don't know about that. But you could tell that he was as pumped up as we were that his team had just won a Super Bowl. But we get onto the bus, the charter buses that are going to take us back to the hotel, and it's kind of quiet, after the pomp and circumstance of winning the game. And they had a live feed of downtown Baltimore on the televisions. And I remember seeing people running out of bars and buildings and jumping on cars, and just seeing the elation that was in that town when we won it was just crazy. And then we go to the after party, and it was the most unbelievable party I've ever been to. I mean, just, every celebrity you could imagine, and people just on top of the world. I mean, these we were the best in the world at what we did that night. We were the Super Bowl champions, and we partied like it. And it's everything that you would imagine it being. You know, when we got back to Baltimore the next day, driving back to the facility, you know, there's a helicopter flying over our bus as we ride back into the facility. There's fans along the highways. Everybody's excited. The next day, we go to the parade downtown, and it's just a sea of people. Like, it's an unbelievable scene, and it's not, you know, at the time, and even now, Baltimore is not exactly a nice place. You know, there's a lot of crime that happens there, but it was like all the crime had stopped for a day. You know, people were in the streets celebrating. Everybody was friends. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And then to go to the stadium after and see 400,000 people in M&T Bank Stadium celebrating this win, you know, a lot of it is just something that I can't even really put into words. I enjoy getting to do things like this where you ask me a question like that and I can kind of think back on it in my mind, but it was just so surreal winning a Super Bowl. It still is surreal to this day. You know, I've got my ring in my bedroom. It just kind of sits there and collects dust. I don't really wear it a whole lot, but I've got one. And to know that, you know, I've got one and what we did before we walked out to the stadium to start the parade, I remember John Harbaugh saying, you know, this is one of the last times that this team is ever going to be together. And that's kind of when the moment hits you. It's like, all right, this thing we did together is over. And the guys that we did it with largely won't be here anymore. He says, you might not be in the same room with these guys anymore, but you're going to walk together forever as champions. And no matter where you go in this life, you're going to walk together having won Super Bowl 47 and been a member of that team. And those are the things I think that you really cherish the most in being part of a football team or any team for that matter, is doing something great and then going the rest of your life knowing that that person you did it with is somewhere else and can carry that same kind of weight with them. And ever since then, I've been looking for that same feeling again. And I think that's something that I'll continue to chase all of my living days.
You mentioned obviously after winning the Super Bowl, it's a big party atmosphere right away. Do you get any sleep that night?
I did not. I didn't get 1 ounce of sleep. Some of my teammates didn't either. I didn't play in the game, so, I mean, I was, you know, pretty well rested, but, some of my teammates that played a lot, I don't think they were able to stay up quite as late as I was, but, I mean, there were a lot of guys that were up all night long, and, you know, that's what I think about now. Whenever every championship game I watch, you know that when it's over, that those guys are out celebrating on top of the world because they're world champions, and you should celebrate when you achieve something like that.
Yeah, it's a huge accomplishment. So yeah, you should party all night long.
Yeah, yeah,
So describe for me a little bit the intensity and pressure of constantly fighting for an active spot on the roster.
yeah. It's real, right? It's a very cutthroat and competitive line of work. It's the most competitive industry there is in the world, and you know that there could be things that are out of your control that take you out of one of those spots. You know, there could be roster cap space issues in some other position, and they need to free something up so somebody gets cut. There are guys that get close to their tenure to having free healthcare for life, and they cut them because they don't want to pay them. You know, like there's all kinds of shady things that go on, but at the end of the day, everybody's at that level because they want to play, and everybody that's there is the best at what they do. So you got to be incredibly lucky, incredibly blessed to be in a spot to do that. You know, my rookie year, I was probably one play away from a guy getting hurt and getting activated. Some way, somehow, that never happens. Nobody on the offensive line got severely injured that whole year, which thankfully led us to a Super Bowl. But as much as you want that job yourself, you also know that those other guys in the room with you are working their tails off to feed their families as well. And that kind of common struggle that you go through together, you end up rooting for one another. And I think that it's a fine line between a competitive balance and a family atmosphere because that really is what you're getting at. You want to win and you want to be able to play and be the best, but you also care about the guys that are sitting there next to you. And I think that brotherhood aspect of it is probably the thing that I miss the most about being a football player.
So now, as an offensive lineman, success often means working anonymously. The focus is usually on the playmakers. How do you instill that same sense of team first humility into your young players today?
Yeah, that's a great question. We spend a lot of time emphasizing, especially to our offensive guys, about how hard they play without the football. It's easy for receivers or running backs to, want the ball in their hands at all times. But to me, as a play caller and as a football coach, it's much more important that you're playing as hard as you can without the football as you are with the football. Because if you can play hard without the football, we know that you'll play hard with the football. Selfishly, we try to give our linemen a little more shine than what we give some other guys, maybe some different shirts, some different kind of culture things. But everybody around here knows, what position that I played and which one that I certainly value the most on a team. And I think any good football coach would value the offensive lineman the most on any given team. But I think for us, just trying to, say their names and echo their names in the newspaper or on news broadcasts as much as we can. I really like looking as an offensive lineman as a weapon, right? People think that your deep threat receiver or your game breaking running back or your all time great quarterback, that these are weapons. But in fact, the five guys up front are also weapons. And when utilized the right way, they can be very effective in implementing a game plan to win a football game. So for us, it all starts up front. And so every install that we do, we got to start with the big guys. For every celebration we got to start with the big guys, but trying to make them the main thing and make that appealing to other people to want to be part of as well.
Now, looking back on your time in the NFL, what is the single most important lesson you took away from the entire experience?
Well, that's a good question. I probably the easiest answer, as I said before, is to take the good with the bad. Our season this year, we finished 7-3. Was very proud of the way that our guys played in a lot of football games. Obviously, lost three big ball games. We lost the last game of the year, which is not what we want to do. But even with those losses, there was so much that we accomplished. We won 7 games. One of our players is the all-time leading punt returner in state history. We've had a lot of guys achieve great things and find success that they themselves didn't think they could have otherwise. And I think you see that kind of bond start to form, but also, being there for these young people is such a critical part of their lives. Our players on our team right now are growing and they're learning and they're trying to figure out their way in the world. And for myself, football is the vehicle that I have to teach those values to these guys. So while it's disappointing to lose and while that's not what you work for, it does teach you some resiliency. It does teach you how to pick yourself up and keep going. It teaches you how to do hard things. It teaches you how to be accountable. So while we want to win all the games, we know that we're not going to. But if we can take those good things and those bad things and make them all part of the experience, I think that ultimately is the goal of any team.
As your NFL career started to wrap up, did you always know you wanted to return to coaching?
Did. I fell in love with this game at a very young age and couldn't see myself doing anything else. I actually remember writing a paper in a sophomore English class about wanting to be the head football coach at Q&D one day. I think I'm one of the few people that can really say that I've achieved every goal that I've ever set for myself. I wanted to be an all-state, all-American high school football player. I did that. I wanted to play high-level college football. I did that. Wanted to play in the NFL. I did that. Won a Super Bowl. Did that. And then I wanted to come back and be the head football coach at my high school. I'm currently doing that now. I'm succeeding the guy that I played for, a man that had been there for a long, long time. Now my next goal is I want to win a state championship coaching this high school football team. So I just feel really blessed to get to do what I do on a daily basis. I teach during the day, so I'm a PE and health teacher. So those are also passions of mine, health and fitness especially. So I really get to live out every dream that I've ever had for myself and share all these experiences with people and hopefully to validate their own goals and pursuits and let them know that there's no dream too big. If you decide that you want to go attain it, you should pursue it. And here's my experience on how to do that.
Now, if one of the players that you coach comes to you and says that their goal is to be in the NFL, what advice do you give them?
I would tell them that's an incredibly challenging goal, that there are 32 teams in the NFL, and depending on what position you play, there may be at most 5 guys of that position on any given team. So uh, I would say that people laughed at me when I told them in high school I wanted to play college football and pro football. So I'd say that prepare yourself for that kind of ridicule. But if that level of ridicule is enough to take you away from achieving that goal, then it was never really your goal to begin with. I think that is really good advice for people to set that lofty goal, but to also have some kind of fallback option. Because if the NFL hadn't worked out for me, well, what was I going to do? I mean, I couldn't just not do anything. So you got to have a backup plan in all things, and I think that that's certainly what I would try to sell to somebody. And if it's not even a backup plan, but it's what's your exit strategy. So when your playing career does come to an end, what comes next for you? I think that's probably the biggest thing that I missed out on in playing was I wasn't really developing any real useful skill. I can't fix your car. I can't build a house. I can't, you know, assemble cabinets for you or anything like that. I don't know, spreadsheets. My wife is an accountant. She handles all that stuff for me. So that's way over my head. But the things that I could do, I could block a three technique, I could protect a quarterback, but those don't do me a whole lot of tangible good right now. Obviously I can teach other young people how to do those things, but for me, I knew that I wanted to coach. I knew that, I didn't really appreciate at the time that a career in coaching was evident, eventually going to be a career in education. For me to be a high school football coach in any state, let alone the state of Illinois, I had to do something else in addition to that. I had to likely teach. So I was able to kind of combine other passions that I have and then still be able to share these passions with other people and do it in an educational standpoint.
If you could sum up your entire NFL career and college career into one word or one phrase, what would that be?
Brief. It was very brief, you know. I think that playing the game is such a vanishingly small part of your life. And the NFL, the average career is 2.5 years. And that was exactly what my NFL career was. It was very brief. Some have said that NFL actually stands for not for long because guys are not in that profession for very long. And while I was, played at Illinois for 5 years, it just seems now like it was gone in the blink of an eye. And so I think that there are, days that I certainly miss the game, would love to play it. There are less of those days anymore. But I just know how much work goes into anybody's football career. And that work will always end much, much quicker than you ever want it to. This is not a game that you can't play pickup football for the rest of your life like you can basketball, or golf or, baseball, stuff like that. You really have such a small window to play this game. And, for as soon as our players can recognize that and then immediately start to take advantage of every moment they have, I think that's when they really start to enjoy the process a whole lot more.
Now, as we start to wrap things up here, tell me about the person you're recommending and what makes them unique.
The first that I'm recommending is also a fellow educator, a fellow football coach. He is a man that I met a few years ago, coaching an all-star football game, and he coaches at a small co-op school here in Illinois. But he is a really gifted science teacher, and I just have always appreciated the things that he brings to his job from an off the field standpoint. He really is big in developing his athletes and his students. He is somebody that, as I said, has been doing this for a really long time, is a respected educator, and does a lot in his community and for his family. And I just think has a really interesting story from kind of where he's been to where he is today. And I'm blessed to call him a good friend of mine, and still can share experiences with him and learn from him. He is a mentor to me in a lot of ways.
Awesome. I really look forward to talking to him. Thank you so much for your time, Jack, and thank you everyone else out there for listening. Check out the sixth and final episode of this chain next Tuesday, and be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Music, and follow us on social media at One Degree Pod. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone.